So good to see you guys.
Good to see you. So good. It's been a while, and I really appreciate seeing you guys. Matthew, of course, my co-host here, and of course we wouldn't be here, as I always say, without Tom and Jim and talking to them tonight. Um, we have talked about this a bit, so you are a little bit prepared this time, I think, more than usual. But I wanted to talk up front here about Dragnet. So I don't know how much you guys know or anyone watching this, how much of a fan of Dragnet I am. And just to put it in perspective, when I was in high school, and this was before the internet, but I think the only detention I ever got, I was a pretty good kid, and this will show just how much of a nerd I was. I got a detention because the school library had just gotten in all these microfilm cartridges with all kinds of things. And I went in on my lunch and was looking through them for information on Jack Webb and Dragnet. And I had all this stuff, kind of found stuff, but I hadn't gone through it yet. And the bell rang to go to class, and I deemed it was more important to research Jack Webb on the microfilm in the school library than to go to English class. And I remember I got detention for it because I cut class. And like, well, how big of a nerd is that? Awesome. High school kids, shouldn't they be looking at porn? I was looking up Jack Webb. So Dragnet is through and through such a love of mine. And so I know you guys were friends with a lot of the people on Dragnet, and I know over the years you told me like they have different points of view, and so I give it to you.
Well, after we finish this meeting with you guys, we're going to watch tonight an episode of The Rebel, an old Western series. And one of the bad guys in this episode is a guy named Stacy Harris. And he was a good friend of Jack Webb. He worked in the Jack Webb Dragnet movie and the TV series, and probably the radio series as well. And they were such good friends that Jack Webb named his daughter Stacy after Stacy Harris. So we'll be thinking of Jack Webb when we watch The Rebel tonight, when we see Stacy Harris. We have two conflicting stories about people's ideas of Jack Webb. Peggy Webber,
she liked him.
She liked him. She started out at 11 years old. She had her own radio show that was coast to coast in San Antonio. She created it and directed it and acted in it. But she finally came out to Hollywood after her dad died, and she graduated from high school. Her and her mom moved to Hollywood and started making the rounds. And she got into Dragnet with Jack Webb. And she said that Jack was the right time for me. He did great things for me. I'm quoting her, so I want to say her right. He gave me a wide array of parts to play and allowed me to do more than he allowed a lot of other people. He'd step on people and say, read the script, or keep your eyes this way. Every once in a while, he cut loose and let me do whatever I wanted to do. On Radio Dragnet, I was on it from its inception. I played Joe Friday's mother, but I also played many other parts. In the early days, Jack used me more than any other female. When it came to TV, Jack Webb brought her along. She was in the third show and a lot of ones after that. And she said it was the first time on television that a show was done totally on close-ups of the leading character. It was Jack Webb's idea. He thought since the TV screens in those days, they were pretty small in everybody's living room, he wanted the focus to be right on the close-up of the character. And that was a smart idea, and just focus it on their face. Now, she loved Jack Webb. Richard Devon, who was a good friend of ours, he became upset with Jack Webb. Jack Webb became upset first with Richard Devon for learning his lines for the Dragnet show. When Richard arrived on the set, he had his lines ready to go, and Jack Webb said that we don't learn lines here. We read them from the teleprompter. And Richard said, hey, I'm a professional actor. I learn my lines. We don't do it that way here. And they went back and forth on it. And finally, it ended up, Richard said, where Ben Alexander and Jack Webb read their lines off the teleprompter, and he did his from memory. Down the line, he got hired to work with Jack Webb again in a TV series that Webb had called Noah's Ark. And then a same thing happened, same problem. And the third time he got hired, his agent called him and said, we have a job for you in a show called DA's Man. But we got to let you know that's Jack Webb's studio. but Jack Webb won't be directing it. So Richard said, okay, Webb's not directing it, I'll do it. So he showed up on the set. He's waiting there with the rest of the people ready for the director to arrive. And it was supposedly going to be Ben Alexander. But he said that instead of Ben Alexander, who comes walking along with his bracelet dingling along against his red shirt, Jack Webb. And he told Rich, he told Richard, okay, I want you to do this and this and this and that. And Richard said, well, that don't give me any freedom. He said, I don't care about your freedom. I want you to do this, 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 and that. So Richard said, what do you do in a case like that? You try to do what the director wants, but you try and get in as much as what you want also, and then do it and hope it's a take. And when it's a print, then you're free and you can go home. But after he was doing it, and Webb says, cut, 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 cut. He said, Richard, you're not doing what I told you to do. And Richard said, what do you mean? I listened to you. He said, but you're not doing this, 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 and that. And so he said, that's the last time he ever agreed to work with Jack Webb. So opposing, I Jack Webb.
Would you want to hear another story about Dragnet?
Yeah. No, Jim, I never want to hear stories about it. Of course. That's why we're here.
So I had to read this because I just found it. After Russ Conway.
Oh, Russ Conway.
He said, I'll never forget a Dragnet with Webb. There was a big rainstorm the night before. I was living in Beverly Glen Canyon on Seabury Lane in our first house, and we had after we were married. All hell broke loose. The house across from us went off its foundation. My retaining wall in back of my house came down with mud up to the windowsill, and the lady across the street grabbed her child out of the high chair just before the mud took her kitchen out. So I was out all night trying to help people, and I had to go to work the next day at Universal. I couldn't get out except by walking, so my agent picked me up down at Sunset in Beverly Glen. I got over to Universal, and I'm playing a fire captain, and I knew my lines, but they threw water on me all day after. I've been up all night with the water and mud because I'm in the fire and fighting everything. Webb just said to me, read the teleprompter. You don't have to bother saying lines by memory. I said, I know them. That's all right. It's faster if you read them, he said. So I learned all my lines for nothing. I'm playing all this stuff with these guys all day and having water thrown on me. I'm looking wet and muddy after being through all that the night before. Those are the little things that stand out when you look back on them, he concluded.
Oh, man. Now, going back to... Go ahead.
Reading lines.
Yeah.
Well, Jack Webb invented the teleprompter, correct? Which yeah, I'm pretty sure, and which is ingenious for a completely different medium, right? So, like, he didn't mean to invent it for, like, a live talk show or a newscast. He wanted to say, now people don't have to act. Here. And you can see it in the shows. You can see people reading it, and I feel so bad for them because at the time when you first see it, you're under the impression that they just didn't do the homework or they didn't do the work. And you're realizing, no, he's making them, he's putting them in that corner. So it is interesting. And with Peggy Webber, she went to college with Jack Webb, so they started on doing the Dragnet series in college on the college radio station, and that always fascinated me because one thing that amazes me about Jack Webb is just his entrepreneurship. You're looking at like the dawn of television, and Jack Webb's in the thick of it, creating this little show of his, and he's assembling this repertoire company of these actors, Peggy Webber and others that are playing different parts every episode or whatever, and he's got his little studio that he's running and making this show sort of against all odds or pioneering so many things. And so that side of it is very fascinating to me. But I do feel sorry for the actors and the teleprompter issue. So it is interesting to hear that. Go ahead.
One of my favorite Dragnet episodes of all time, I forget the name of the episode, but it all took place in Joe Friday's office. It was three characters, Joe Friday, Ben Alexander, and this guy that they were interrogating to try and break him down. It was Marvin. in one of his early roles, and it was just really good. This on the three of them, and like Peggy said, it was all on close-ups, and it was just working until they finally tear Lee Marvin's down. But it was a really good episode.
That really enforces you need to be very good at your acting, because scenery is not going to compete with you, or whatever else. It's just your face, right?
Right. You really need to have that face that emotes regardless of what's going on, and because it's definitely zoomed entirely way up on you. And I can see how Jack was excited about, when you're doing a radio show, you definitely read the script and act to the script. And I can see where that was his birth of this show. So the meter and the timing and sort of the tone of reading with force is how his ear, enjoyed the show and felt the show should sound. So translating that to television, where no, just read it as fast as you can. But it's iconic. Like his voice and the way that meter is so fast is iconic. It stands out. So while it might not be how television's done today, it makes that show wholly unique and fast-paced and gritty. It's a great show.
We have two more Peggy Webber stories to tell before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Jim will tell a live TV show episode, and I'll tell a radio episode.
Okay, Peggy created a series for television. It was probably the earliest dramatic series from the West Coast. It was called Treasures of Literature. There were 20 shows. She wrote and directed them, and she had leads in most of them. And in one of them, she had a friend, actor Lou Krugman, and he had a scene where he's shot and the camera sees him die. He falls to the floor and the camera fades on him, and then they go to the next scene. Well, Lou Krugman opens the door to go out to the dressing room, and instead he walks into the next scene being filmed. And he didn't know that. And he said, "Thank heavens this is over with."
Yeah, live television.
But the cameras were on him, and they caught him saying that line.
Yeah, and he just got killed.
And he just got killed.
Next scene, he's walking in there. Yeah, live TV was hell.
People have heart attacks.
People vomiting backstage. Okay, it was hell.
Well, yeah.
And then the radio show, Peggy Webber was doing a radio show, and it's a soap opera one where she played the same character each week. And she played a bad lady who was in prison, but she was going to have a baby. And she has a 15-minute monologue, only one at the microphone there. And so she's doing it, and it's really an intense scene. And as she's doing it, the director walks over to her, gets a big red pencil, and crosses off the page. And he turns the next page. He crosses that off. And she said, she thinks to herself, what is this guy doing to me? I'm on air. And she turns on, she's going on. And then the director walks over and he bumps a big screen that protects the actor from the organ, from the, so it's not as much the sound. And this big screen falls over and goes bang. And she's trying to get through this dialogue, his big long monologue. And he goes over and he knocks over a music stand, goes bang. And she's getting angry, but she has to carry on. And then the director, he said, the director's a perfectionist too. And he walks over to the sound room, opens the door and slams the door as he goes in. And so she's mad by this time, but she's staying in character as best she can and finishing it up. And after it was over, the red light goes off, you're off air. Everybody in the sound room starts laughing, and she's angry. And they come out and say, we were preempted. President Truman was giving a talk.
There's a number of stories about live TV that we could share.
Yeah.
So were they just messing with her at that point?
They just didn't tell her. They just made her.
They just forgot to tell her.
They did it on purpose. They did it as a joke, and they made her think that she was doing this big giant.
Incredible.
Yeah. Got to have one more quick live story TV.
Is it 10, or the 10 minutes up?
10 minutes up.
I don't know.
That's okay.
Let's do one
Okay.
more.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed Begley.
Oh.
He was doing a show where he's this business tycoon. He's up on the top floor of some high skyscraper, his office, and the scene when he falls out of the window, he falls to his death. And when they rehearsed it, they had a mattress down below, and he fell out of the window. And then he said, "Well, it was a little hard. Could I have something a little softer?" So they put a few more mattresses down. And so on a show where people were watching it, he falls out of this window, high skyscraper window. You see him fall out of the window. He hits the mattress. You don't see that, but he bounces back up into the window.
One more. They're making a once again a live TV show. Takes place on an airplane, and one of the main characters was a big movie star. The person telling the story didn't tell us the name of the actor, but they were, filming on the airplane, and the guy went blank. He stood up and he says, "I believe this is where I get off." And he walks over to the plane door and steps off, and he's one of the main characters. He can't come for the rest of the movie. Sorry. And
They had to carry on.
yeah, they had to carry on without one of the stars. There's a lot of funny stories. I don't know if he ever got work in another live TV show after that.
I did a play where one of the actors accidentally fell out of the window on the stage, and they had to improvise what to say and how to work out the fact, and he wasn't able to come back. It was like, what do we do? And then in the second act, the stage manager made him up to be all injured, and he came back all made up to be injured, as if he fell out the window and survived, because they didn't know what to do. And he was just on stage, and he was sitting in the windowsill, and he lost his balance, and he fell out. Things happen live. Things happen. One thing about, real quick, I want to mention about Jack Webb while we're on the Jack Webb, and then we can finish up here. A lot of people don't realize that, and it is indirect. It's sort of a Kevin Bacon game version of this, but if it wasn't for Jack Webb, there wouldn't be a Disneyland.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Yeah, because Jack Webb invested in Disney Studios when they were building the studio, because he was making this was the black and white 50s Dragnet, right? He was making he wanted to make the Dragnet series, and so he invested, and they made that at the Walt Disney Studio, and he paid for a lot of the Disney Studio to be built, and he aired Dragnet, and that created the television relationship with Disney and ABC, which led to the Disneyland show, which led to the Disneyland park.
Wow.
But if Jack Webb didn't do that, Disney wouldn't have gotten their new studio, and who knows what Disney would be doing.
And we'd have no Disneyland.